How do you see this impacting education? This is something else that I talked with Reed about because up until relatively recently, my expectation had been, well, I'll just be a professor. That's people have always done that. It's a very old profession. It's difficult, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it. I'll get there, but it seemed like a very viable career pathway. But it really does not feel that way anymore.
I don't think we know. So I view our institutions of higher education as unable to change. No one is actually delegated with the kind of power to make any real change. Forget about AI. So they're just stuck. And in the meantime, people like you and I, we freelance on our own and use AI and learn things. We kind of privatize that part of our education. And it will be that way for quite a while. Now, you're young, and let's say you live to 98 because AI, cures your cancer. So what, you're 30 now? So that's like 68 years or like 60 years, 50 years you've got to worry about. I can't tell you it will be intact that whole time. Maybe it won't be. But I think it will be intact for longer than many people are expecting. So I'm not sure you should give up the plan.
Here's my thinking, and don't interrupt me if you think I'm wrong. I'll just give you a variety of thoughts I have. My understanding is that graduate students are brought into universities largely because they offset teaching load for very little money relative to what a full professor would have to do. And as I was teaching ethics last quarter, and ethics is not an area in which I'm an expert at all. This was an area where if my students asked me a question, I could tell them my opinions, my understanding of the text, but ChatGPT would give them a much more canonical answer about something regarding Kant than I could. And I just see a future in which there may be humans poking their heads in here and there to supervise things, but my students would get a lot more out of getting their questions answered by ChatGPT than by me, getting the material explained to them by ChatGPT than by me. And to the extent that writing is something that's going to be valued in the future, I can't spend nearly as much time as ChatGPT can giving very good feedback on essays, especially as ChatGPT continues to improve. So I just imagine that in a place like a philosophy department, where unlike in, say, chemistry, you don't need human hands to manipulate lab equipment, this labor is going to be displaced relatively soon by AI, especially in the current environment of cuts that we're undergoing. So that's just where things start to begin in my thinking.
I definitely agree with your basic description of what you said, but I'm not sure how much the world cares that the GPT answer is better. And keep in mind, you're at Stanford. That's a highly atypical school. 80% of the sector is state schools. So much of the sector, students don't really learn anything. They learn how to be in society. They interact with different groups of people. They learn something quite intangible by interacting with humans. And the fact that the GPT answer is better, I don't know. I think it takes a long time for that to chip away and arbitrage down what might end up paying for your salary. I think eventually it will, but it's a very slow process.
I agree that it might not, like the students might not think, wow, ChatGPT is answering my questions better. I'd rather have a conversation with ChatGPT. What I am thinking is that while ideally the university is this bastion of learning, the reality I've discovered is the university is a business. I don't quite understand why universities are businesses because nobody owns them. That might be something interesting to talk about because I've been curious about it. But money rules the university.
Of course.
I'm using the university quite the term to cover Harvard, Yale,
Right.
Stanford, all of
And
these
state
places.
schools. It's completely true. But that's also a reason why it's not easy to dislodge. The key piece whose fall would wreck the system would be if employers started saying, I don't give a damn if this person went to school X. Let him debate with the AI or take a test with GPT and see how well they do. That's a good enough credential for me. And then the whole thing really collapses. I'm just not sure when that will happen. Again, I don't think it's soon.
I can't say that I think it will be soon because a name like Harvard just has a lot of oomph to it.
Well, those schools, it will
But
never happen. If nothing else, they're a dating service, right? But, take away the top 10 or 15 schools. When will it happen? I think that's the question. It'll never happen for Harvard.
even Harvard, to again play the devil's advocate, a lot of the students that get in there aren't getting in there because of academic merit. And maybe that's always been the case.
Always been the case.
But moreover, great inflation is absolutely undermining.
No one cares. That's the whole point. Stanford average, I've read it's an A minus. No one minds. It's not a problem. It's a sickness that it's not a problem, but in fact, it's not a problem.
I'm going to compound what is not a problem and just say that ChatGPT makes grades even less sensitive to merit,
Of course.
I suppose.
Of course.
But you're saying that you think that people still aren't going to care. It's just the Harvard name or the Yale name that will get people employed.
Well, the networking, it's not only the name. The networking is critical. And I don't see how that ever goes away. But again,
Okay.
a lot of schools, the networking value is much smaller. So I'd still draw this big distinction between the very top and lower down.